I spoke a little bit about risk in one of the previous episodes when I used my son's soccer experience as a case study for how you have to take chances and do leaps into the unknown if you want to advance in anything, in particular in soccer, but it's in any kind of situation in life. And the purpose of this podcast is to give people a sense for what it feels like to run a hedge fund. So I think this fits very well. This episode is going to fit very well into this mission and purpose because I want to give people a little bit of a anecdotal reference for what we actually mean when we talk about being unique and doing something that is absolutely you, the 0 to 1 concept by Peter Thiel. I want to give people a little bit of a sense for what it means. I'm going to use my son's soccer experience and give an update on where we stand there. I'm also going to talk a little bit about my own career, the way I started as a journalist and then transitioned into Wall Street and then ended up as a hedge fund manager. This is the Not Even Wrong podcast. It's June 4th, 2021. This is Krim Delco. For the day, the fund is up 3.8%. The market is up 50 basis points. For the year, we are down 16.4%. The market is up 11.5%. We're underperforming by 25.9%, excuse me, by 27.9%. I'm sorry. We're underperforming by 27.9%. So let's get those numbers out. I do agree with you, Henry, that talking about percentages is really kind of futile. But I think what matters when we talk about this is two things. First of all, I want to make it clear that the performance of the fund is the most important thing. The performance of the fund is the most important thing. Maybe not the daily performance, but what we've done year to date and what we've catered over the last 12 years since we were in business, that is all that matters because everything else is just talk. This is the beauty about the hedge fund business. This is the reality check. So that's why I emphasize the performance numbers, even though maybe the daily performance numbers really don't mean much. The over time, it is very important to keep focus on the performance because that is the reality check. So now let's talk a little bit about my son's soccer experience. A few weeks ago, I spoke in an episode about sort of his dilemma, which was stay with the status quo, put up with mediocrity, hopefully somehow grow out of it, but always be kind of dragged down by mediocrity, or just take a leap into the unknown. And particularly now in COVID times, it is even more difficult to transition. It is always difficult to go from a lesser position into a higher position. It is always difficult to join a situation where you have more upside maybe than the situation gives you, that the situation gets out of you. So things like that are always risky. And this is exactly the position my son was in. He took a leap of faith. We did actually, as a family, make that decision that it's going to be up or out. So you're either going to find a better situation, or you're going to either quit soccer, or you're going to at least take a hiatus. But you're not going to put up at mediocrity. So now let me give you the lay of the land, give it a little bit more flesh around the bone here. What does it mean, mediocrity? So there's a club. I'm not going to name names here. So we live in San Francisco. There's a certain soccer club. They have what they have. They have their means. They have their management. They have their coaches. And what they have is pretty good for the city. It's the best in the city, but it's certainly not competitive at any in any shape or form. If you really want to go, let's say, national, professional, play for the national team, things like that. This club just doesn't have the infrastructure. It doesn't have the players. It doesn't attract the kinds of players that are necessary to advance. And soccer is a team sport. So no matter how good you are, you're going to be constrained by your teammates, by the ability of the team to attract good players, by the standards that those players set, by the kind of training that they ask themselves to perform, but then also ask you to perform, all these kinds of things. So it's also, let's say, the notion that you don't want to be the best in class by far, because that means you're in the wrong class, right? You don't want to be the best in your cohort, because that means you're in the wrong cohort. You want to be good, you want to be one of the best, but not by far the best. So and in the case of my son, I don't want to talk about who is best or not best, but he certainly was by far the most dedicated kid in his team, and it started showing on the performance side. So which is nice to see that there is actually correlation between dedication and performance, mental strength, physical strength, all these things. So he took a leap of faith, and he got actually a deal, which I think is phenomenal for him. He got a team that is, at least on paper, much, much better. And I just want to talk a little bit about this, because this deal, on paper, it sounds amazing. It's kind of like getting into Stanford or something like that. But then when you look at the details, there are lots of things that are, let's say, not as great as they might sound in the beginning. For example, the team that he's joining has a great reputation, but a lot of the good players are leaving. So he's kind of joining a team which is actually, as a team, not in good shape. So you could then say, well, okay, should I join a team like that? Is this really worth it? And I just want to say one thing here, that no matter what situation you're in, no matter what kind of upside you see, you will always find a reason to doubt the team that wants you might not be the right team for you. So this, I call it the Woody Allen effect, which is, I don't want to join a club that wants me. I think it's real. I think you really have to think about these things, and sometimes it's useful to think about these things. Sometimes it's futile, but fundamentally, I think what matters here is that you have to take a risk, not just by leaving your old situation, but you're going to take a risk with the new situation, and you got to be conscious about that. And I think for us, as a family, and for my son, what matters most is that he has his dedication, he has his goals, he has his, sort of raison d'être for why he's doing what he's doing. And like they say in the Middle East, all roads lead to Damascus. And they used to say in the Roman Empire, all roads, they eventually end up in Rome. So the same way here, I think all roads eventually will end up wherever you need to go. If you think that you are in a position to play for the U.S. national team, your own work, your own dedication, your own success will define that. It's not going to be your team. Your team helps. It is important to be part of a strong team. Again, soccer is a team sport, but that's, I would say, the icing on the cake. And there is a certain level of performance that you need to ask for. But overall, I think it is really important for an individual to keep their own dedication and their own mindset in check, for make sure that there's congruence between the mindset and the goals. And that's a lot more important than the team you join and things like that. So we're pretty happy with the situation right now. My son's pretty happy. And just as a side note, now that he has an offer from a very good team, also other offers are starting to trickle in. Interest is starting to grow. People are paying attention. And that's something that I also want to share. How should I say? It is another thing that happens very often in life, that once you have one thing, all the other things come. When it rains, it pours. So a very good example. I mean, this is perfect example of this particular sort of saying. And it doesn't mean much. It just means that you have to, when you start, you have to take that risk, leave your old situation, go into the unknown, and the rewards, should you succeed, are much, much higher than you might even think. Because not just are you going to get an offer, let's say, for a situation that suits you, you're going to get multiple offers. And then, of course, you have to make a decision which one is the best, and all those things, which is fine. That's another problem that I think is easily solvable. So now I want to transition from this conversation to the hedge fund business, and just give a little bit anecdote of how I transitioned into this business. So I started out as a journalist, and then decided that this wasn't for me. Again, it was too much mediocrity, too much sort of complacency, things like that in the business that I just didn't want to put up with. So I did what most people did, and this was in the 90s. I went to business school, because that was the best way for me to get into the hedge fund business, which was my goal. My goal was to get into the hedge fund business. So I went to business school. There, I think this is an analogy to my son's situation. You don't want to compromise. So I went to a very, very top business school, because I think there's a lot of snake oil in the business school business. and you don't want to be caught sort of off guard and maybe compromise there, because I think the sliver between very high quality and very little quality is a very thin sliver. It's a winner takes all business, the business school business, and it's not just that you learn more or less. That is of course also part of it, but I would say the most important thing in the business school experience for me was also the network and the connection and the reputation that you get by being in a certain school. And if you're just in a school maybe which is slightly less reputable, you lose all of that, and then you're really kind of basically on your own. So I went to one of those very high-end business schools, and then I got into Wall Street. And again, I had to take a leap of faith here and kind of go into the unknown, because for me it was clear. My goal was to run a hedge fund, or in the parlance of finance, I wanted my own P&L. Now, what that means for the lay people, it just means that I wanted to decide about profit and loss. P&L is profit and loss. I wanted to have the ultimate decision making about what kind of risk to take, what kind of capital to invest, and therefore also be responsible for profit and loss. This is something that when you join a Wall Street firm, you'll be shocked that I would say probably 90%, if not 99%, I don't know, this is just me anecdotally saying, don't have that kind of exposure. So what you then get offered is often a support job, sales, or even worse, real support, which is something along the lines of technical support or God knows what, things that absolutely are crucial, and nothing wrong with those jobs. But if you want to be running money and make money in the finance world, you need to own a P&L. And for that, you're going to have to take a leap of faith. You're going to have to step into the void. Nobody is going to give it to you. This is not something that people just give away, because everybody who has it knows how precious it is. It's, by the way, also very difficult to have that kind of responsibility. Only very specific people are even capable of having it. That's why it's not given to everybody. Most people should never even have it, because they would have sleepless nights and diarrhea and things like that all the time. So anyway, long story short, I took a leap of faith. I went from this prestigious business school. I took a job which was not as prestigious as others, but it had a P&L attached to it. And this is very important. Also, in terms of, let's say, in the case of my son and his soccer, what are we looking for when it's about his, let's say, what are the metrics we're looking for when we decide, is this a good fit? Most importantly, it's the quality of the team and the dedication. It's, by the way, not the playtime. Playtime is not a metric that you want to optimize for, because it's very easy. You can optimize for playtime by going to a lesser team. You want to have a very high quality team with top players, and then of course you're gonna want to have as much quality playtime as possible. Quality playtime is playtime in games that are quality. Not there's a lot of games in youth soccer that are basically just kicking the ball around on a pasture, and that's not quality game time. Quality game time is top teams, top players on both sides, and you are in there doing interesting things. In the case of my son, he's a keeper, so he has to make saves, maybe also give some passes for attacks and things like that, save penalties. That's the kind of stuff that is quality play time. So how much of that can you get? So those are the things we optimize. Back to the finance business. In our case, if you're a young person that is aspiring to run a hedge fund, the sooner you get to a P&L, the better. Why? Because it just takes time to understand what the responsibility of managing money is, something that no textbook can teach you. Your mother's not going to teach you that. Your grandfather's not going to teach you that. This is something you just have to learn on your own, by yourself, in your own four walls, in your own brain. It is a tough process. I always compare it to wine. It just takes time. It needs to sit there for a while. You need to take those losses sometimes, and the wins. You need to understand how to deal with wins and losses. It is not normal for a person to walk into the office in the morning and be, let's say, making, in my case, let's say there was a day when I was up $10 million. My P&L, as a Krim Delco, I was a young trader on Wall Street. I made $10 million. It's an amazing feeling, but it's a feeling you have to get used to. And I don't need to mention, I think it's probably even easier to understand the opposite of that. You walk into the office and you're down $5 million. That happens too. So you have to live with those types of emotions that come out when these things happen. And then when you start running your own hedge fund and you take money from people, friends and family. That's how we start. That's how everybody starts. So you take money from friends and family, and then next thing you know, you lose money for these people. It happens. It's not realized losses. It's booking losses and things like that. But nevertheless, it's still uh, it's still it's a bad thing. So you have to get used to these things. I don't know how else to say it. It's something that you just have to you have to you have to let it sink in. You have to understand what am I doing? And that's why we at Orange Capital Bonds, we build a principal stack so we can go every day when we lose. We are now down 16.5% for the year. We have a drawdown for 16.5%. That's a bad thing. Yes, we did well. We have a phenomenal CAGR since inception, meaning we did very well for our investors, particularly the investors that have been for us for a long time, have done extremely well with us. But nevertheless, for this year, we have a drawdown, and that matters. So we need to understand, why do we have the drawdown? What is our principal stack saying about that? Are there things we need to be Popperian about this? Are there things are there errors we can find? We need to criticize our approach. We need to criticize our positions, every day. For example, CRISPR is something that we put a lot of capital in the CRISPR technology, and turns out that it's possible that the whole COVID pandemic started because people used CRISPR and became the sorcerer's apprentices with CRISPR and blew up, and it could be the Chernobyl of CRISPR. And we need to criticize the application of CRISPR in science as a business tool to make money. This is something that we took for granted, and now we have to criticize and find errors. I think we did that, and our conclusion is that there could be maybe a cold winter for sort of function research in pandemic research and those types of things, meaning that we build artificial bugs to test them, and then they go out, escape the lab and create a pandemic. So that kind of stuff we will not do, but we will do cancer research, sickle cell research, etc. Those things will not stop, and that's the kind of stuff we're invested in. So to summarize, again, I just wanted to give a quick update on my son's situation with the soccer. It was in the context of you need to take risk and be unique and do your thing and take the leap of faith and step into the void whenever you want to achieve something in life. In particular, when it's about, let's say, my son's case, he wants to be a professional soccer player. That is a dream for almost every other child in the world, at least boy, and in the US, even girls. So that is definitely a very competitive type of situation to be in. How do you deal with that? By being unique, finding your own way to do it, and that's there's no other way than to do that. Step into the void, take the risk, and then hopefully end up at the right place on the other side. The same thing, you want to run a hedge fund. Lots of people want to have that luxury to run money and be sort of master of their own universe, but it's a very difficult process. Again, you need to step into the void, take the risk, and hopefully you get at the right you end up at the right place. You need a principal stack. Now, it doesn't have to be formal like we have at Orange Capital Partners. My son has a principal stack in his head. It's called dedication, it's called drive. He knows what he needs to do. He needs to become as good technically as possible. He needs to have a physical posture that is adequate to his position, and he needs to gain experience and get as much quality play time as possible. And in the hedge fund world, that would mean as much experiences, as much iterations as possible with situations, with ideas, with innovations. The purpose of our fund is to generate wealth by investing in fundamentally new concepts and engineering practices. So by doing that, we're building an innovation stack. We're investing in companies that are building an innovation stack, and that takes a lot of iterations, a lot of ups and downs. And those are the kinds of things you need to let sink in and get used to them and learn how to deal with them. And only then you can become a successful wealth generator. And this is what we are with Orange Capital Partners. This is what we strive to be. This is what we strive to be. Thank you.